everybody, to another episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast. With me, as always, is Rusty Mansell and Kip Adams. I'm Jordan Hill. A lot to talk about coming off of a Memorial Day. Everybody kind of had a chance to get a break before we kind of dive right back into it. A lot of news, a lot of things going on last week. Big week for the SEC as far as the SEC spring meetings down in Destin. I got to start with my most important question. I got to throw it to Rusty. Rusty? What were the thoughts on Top Gun Maverick? That's what everybody wants to hear about.
Man, whew. I kind of, it's like a visit high. You know, the official visits come in, you have to have a couple of days to let it settle. And I thought it was great. I thought it was well done. I've read a lot of behind the scenes stuff on it, so I'm not giving away anything on here. But so the decision by the producers not to release this on streaming, evidently there was a lot of pressure last year at this time to release it, you know, in theaters where available and then streaming were not available. But that decision to wait another year was probably the best one they made, because I saw it in IMAX and I'm telling you, it was incredible. From the time the very first scene gets you locked in, and man, you're on your edge of your seat till the very, very end. But it was well done. Those sequels are hard to do, man. I know that's hard to do over the years, and I'm at the age where everything's a sequel now. So I'm waiting on Weird Science 2, I guess. So, But it was great. I thought it was great. The movie theater, I went at 10 o'clock at night, man. Movie theater was slammed out, but it was really good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. We had a chance to see it yesterday, and I thought it lived up to the hype. And I think I'm gonna have to fight the urge to go see it again. I've got a buddy that loved the original, and
Yeah.
he was like, "Hey, I'm going tomorrow night." I was like,
You see that right there.
There you go.
There's two
There it
posters.
is.
The two posters been hanging here for a long time, so that's one of them.
Kip, how was your Memorial Day?
Well, I saw the movie as well. I went to a Dolby Cinema theater. I think IMAX has a big screen, but man, that sound and the way that they include that into the base, like Rusty said, I knew within 2 minutes I made the right choice. I felt like I was, right back in it. I didn't get to see the original in the theater, but I definitely saw the original dozens of times, watched it before I saw Top Gun Maverick, and I was wondering, like, how does Maverick get to go up in the sky again? Is he going to get it to go up? Because I don't know if we get clearance to go up in one of those when we get up to our age, Rusty. But again, won't spoil anything. I liked the way they did it. It all made sense, and it had it all. I mean, I think as far as the perfect summer movie and the perfect timing for that movie to come out, obviously with Memorial Day weekend, I think they timed everything just right. And it was just a great experience to be back in the theater, to have everyone, just cheering and applauding. It was an awesome experience, and hopefully everyone else will have a chance to go see it. So now that we've had our sponsored ad out the way, well, let's talk some Georgia football.
Absolutely, man. And there's a lot to talk about. And I'll start with Rusty with what's going to be a very, very important week for Georgia recruiting. You got official visits coming up this weekend. A lot of names, but obviously the biggest one, the one everybody wants to talk about, is Arch Manning. He's going to be on hand in Athens, get a chance to look at the program and get a chance to spend some time around some of these other recruits. I'll start with you, Rusty, and then Kip, you can kind of just pick up from what Rusty has to say. Just how important is this weekend, and maybe what should we sort of expect to hear out of what comes out of this weekend?
I mean, they've been here, 5, 6 times now. I mean, they've done the dinners in town. I mean, this is just another chance to spend kind of post-spring with Georgia staff and kind of see where they're at. And he's going to spend some time around some other very high-level targets. We put a list out this morning on Dogs 247, and there'll be a name or two we're going to add later in the week once we confirm those guys. But this is an important visit. Every visit with Arch Manning is important, but you have his mom and dad back on campus, and he'll be in town this weekend. So it's a big one. I don't want to sugarcoat it. And here's the thing I always say, anybody that says they know what's going on with him is probably guessing. I've been pretty confident in saying this is a Georgia-Texas battle, and still is, in my opinion. Which way he is leaning, but don't have the answer for that right now. But this is a very important visit with his family. He goes to Texas later this month, and I don't know. They're taking their time with their decision. The next question is, when's he going to decide? That's what everybody asks me, and I don't know. It seems to me they're really taking their time with this thing because they know the amount of eyes, the amount of people that are trying to get in that school, trying to see him, trying to interview him, and all those types of things, trying to interview anybody around him to get any kind of decision there. So we'll see how it goes. I don't think this visit is going to suck at all. I mean, it's going to be, Georgia does a great job with official visits, and I certainly think that nothing they do this weekend will hurt them. Again, they have sat down with this family many, many times over the last year, last year and a half, actually. So we'll see where this thing goes, but this is a big one. This is a big visit, but I can tell you right now, if you're a subscriber on Dogs 247, and those names I put up this morning, there's some freaking dudes on that list. And to start this thing off this weekend, Kirby Smart, they're coming out with a bang, and they've got some major 2023 targets in town. But, we're not going to sugarcoat it. It starts with Arch Manning.
Yeah, definitely. And then you start looking at the other guys he's going to have with him on campus. And, you always want to surround him with some guys that, maybe he might want to play with at the next level. And Georgia's got both of its tight end commits in Pierce Sperlin and Lawson Lucky taking their official visits this weekend as well. And then Justice Haynes, the running back out of Roswell, now going to be at Buford for his senior season, but a top 5 running back in the country, maybe a top 3 running back in the country when all is said and done. And that's a guy that Georgia's been on a long time. I think Rusty would agree that Georgia's positioned itself well in Justice's recruitment. And it's just, that's the other aspect of this is the fact that we were always talking about you want to get that last visit. You want to get that visit in December if you can. You want to be as close to where they are in the decision process. If this doesn't show you that the decision process has changed, I don't know what will. We're already looking at 40 official visitors probably in the month of June, at least a dozen this weekend with Arch Manning. That shows you that just the timeline's changed. And I think the transfer portal has a lot to do with that. Everyone kind of wants to know how these rosters look. And then also, that's another thing. I'm sure Arch is going to want to know who's going to be in here on this roster after the season is over. I think that's going to be something maybe he's trying to look and see. Are my playmakers going to still be here? Is this offensive line? What's the offensive line going to look like next year, the next 2 years? That's probably some other questions he's going to want, because when Arch Manning gets on the roster, I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of change in the quarterback room as well. So he's going to have a big effect on either Texas or Georgia's roster moving forward. So I think that's going to just be big for Georgia, just to kind of show him and set him up for this is what this program is going to look like for the next 3 years. And I think you just look at that group, and also just Jalen Hill, the wide receiver out of Texas. Brian McClendon's been working on that one for a long time. That's a big time recruiting battle for him as well. I just think you look at that group, and it bodes pretty well for Georgia. I think there's some guys there that are going to probably give Arch some pretty positive feedback on what they think about the Georgia program. And that's really what you want. You want him to feel comfortable, because that's what he's going to be looking for in this visit. He's seen all the presentations. He's seen the academics. He's been able to see everything really they've been able to show him. Now it's just about fit. How do I fit into this program? How do I fit into the other players that I'll be suiting up with on Saturdays? And I think Georgia's done a good job just, getting the other guys in town, the other commits in town. They're going to show him, just that family atmosphere, that family feel. And that's kind of what he's been saying all along. Arch has said, he spoke as highly as Athens as you can really speak of. So that's why Georgia's in this. And I think it's kind of just up to them just to get that one last big shot, because I think regardless of his timeline, we all kind of agree it's probably going to, if it's something that happens before the season, this could be Georgia's last time to get him on campus. If it goes into the season, well, no, that's a whole nother roller coaster ride that we'll have to be prepared for. And that means he wants to see these teams play during the season. It's a possibility, but I think Georgia and Texas would probably like to have this figured out before the season begins.
All eyes are definitely going to be on Athens this weekend, and it'll be interesting one way or the other when a decision is made. Just the domino effect, what that happens for recruits for whichever school Arch picks, because it seems pretty likely you're going to see some guys line up, kind of have Arch being the Pied Piper, bringing in some big names to wherever he decides to go to school. So we'll be watching. Obviously, we'll have all kinds of content off of this weekend, what we get to see, what we hear from these visits, because like Rusty and Kip both said, it's a huge weekend. It's going to be very, very important, and it'll have a lot of bearing, you'd have to think, on this upcoming recruiting class for Georgia. So before we wind up taking a break, I want to talk a little bit about last week. Georgia had their athletic association board meeting. A lot of really interesting stuff coming out of that meeting, and I think first and foremost, really the most important thing was kind of getting an update on Kirby Smart's extension. We had heard and everybody assumed after the national title season that Kirby was going to get a new contract and extension on the deal he has right now that runs through 2024. UGA President Jerry Moorhead offered an update to the board. Was honestly kind of surprised to see Jerry bring it up in front of the board because nothing was done, but he said there's been a lot of positive talks, spoke really highly of what's been going on between Moorhead and athletic director Josh Brooks, and then obviously Kirby's agent Jimmy Sexton. All signs indicated from what Moorhead said that a new deal is coming. Moorhead made it sound like it's probably just a few weeks away. Kip, just how important do you think it is to have this figured out? Obviously, everybody expects Kirby to be the face of this program going forward, but we knew going into this offseason that a new contract was going to be in talks, in the mix. And based on everything we heard, it sounds like things are moving in a positive direction toward getting this thing done.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that Kirby is looking at, already doing pretty well for himself, but I think he's got a big payday ahead of him. And I think that's been known since, January 10th, if not before that he was going to be able to write his own check. And I think it's just all about, that little dialogue in the contracts. I think right now, with Jimmy Sexton involved, he's going to make sure his client gets, everything he's asking for, or where that lies as far as salary. It's anyone's guess. I would say that it's probably, probably going to add a digit to his annual salary to what he's making now. He was making about $7 million before. I think, you look at that 10 million number and then it's all about years. How many years? That'll be something that's interesting. How long is this contract? We've talked about how the landscape has changed, how we just saw the offensive line coach at Georgia, Matt Luke, decide, this is just, there's a lot going on with being a college football coach now, a lot more than there was before. And even Kirby's talked about that, about, how it's getting to be a full-time job every single day of the year. There's not really any downtime. So how long is this contract going to be? And that could also just say a lot for the college football landscape as well. Everyone's kind of thinking Kirby can stay in Athens as long as he wants to. So how long will that be? Will he be in Athens another 10 years? I think that's probably a good barometer to kind of set right there. And that's kind of just where I'm waiting to see in this contract is how long is the contract? Because there's just a lot of change going on in college football, and then there's probably a lot of change that still needs to happen between the NIL transfer portal. I think the fact that it's kind of evolving on its own without any foresight into what needs to kind of be locked down or what rules need to be in place. That's probably something that's on Kirby Smart's mind a lot as well, as he tries to put the Georgia program in the best position possible. So I just think there's a lot of things in the background working on, but I think right now he's going to get that next contract. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens, in the next month or so. Probably be a good timing to happen if you have your recruits on campus as well. That'd be something that'd be good for the program to announce when they have some visitors. So that wouldn't surprise me at all, but I don't think there's going to be any surprise when the actual numbers come out, because I think Kirby Smart's definitely earned it.
Rusty, any thoughts on the contract talk as far as Kirby goes?
He's going to get paid.
Very succinct. Yes.
That man, he will never worry about a power bill ever again. If he has them now, he's going to get paid. And, it's pretty much going to come down to, some of the details, how far Georgia goes with it and how far Jimmy Sexton pushes it. But you strike when you win a national championship for the first time since 1980, came here to win a national championship. He did it. Georgia grad, checks all those boxes. I recently saw where Sam Pittman went with Jimmy Sexton as well. So Jimmy Sexton is about to get 2 clients paid, and I'm sure those deals will be done probably sooner than later.
Yeah, President Moorhead had mentioned during that board meeting that they really would have revisited his contract after 2022 no matter what. Well, Kirby probably picked good timing to have the contract come back up coming off the national title.
Yep.
So we're going to take a quick break real quick. We're going to come back, talk a little bit more about some of the things that came out of that board meeting last week, and then also talk about what's going on in Destin this week and how it affects the Bulldogs. Welcome back, everybody. Well, yeah, going back to that board meeting last week, another really big piece of news that came out of it was the board approving a $68.5 million renovation project on Sanford Stadium. The focus is on the south side of the stadium. It's something that talked about during the board meeting. I mean, this stadium was built in 1929. There's a lot of parts of the stadium that need revamping. Very interesting to see the layout, and I would recommend anyone who missed it to go on. I tried to write a really in-depth story about what's changing, some of the things that are being moved around, more bathrooms, better access to through some of the stairs, and just trying to make it more accessible to fans. I mean, making it easier to sort of navigate the stadium. A lot more ADA seating, a lot better situations as far as that goes. I think that this is sort of the state of what we've seen in the facility arms race over and over again in the SEC. I mean, kind of on top of the $68.5 million project, they also talked about what they called the 5-year vision. It's going to be a 5-year vision where they're hoping to raise $300 million. And a lot of that's going to be put toward facilities. And, they talked about the people and the places and really trying to take care of making sure that people who come to Georgia, whether it's the players or the coaches, have the state-of-the-art things, the facilities they need to work on a daily basis to go out and compete for championships. So it was very interesting just to see all the different pieces of the puzzle, the way things are laid out, the vision that Josh Brooks has. Looking at the stadium renovations, looking at the work that's already been done, I'll throw it to you, Rusty. Just, how important do you think, even more on like the recruiting side, are these upgrades, are the things we've seen specifically around the football program, the dedication and the commitment that the athletic department's had to make sure that the football team has the best there is as far as the facilities they got to work with?
I think the last renovation they did was the most important for recruits. When Kirby Smart put the recruiting lounge in the end zone and built the meeting space where he can meet with players. They have their own section now in the end zone. And I don't think people realized what recruits used to have to do at Georgia. Now, this was Mark Richt era. I mean, this was not that long ago. They would have those players on the field in small bleachers, and they would have to leave that area with 5 minutes to go in the half to get them walk all the way up this first level of steps into a snack room where they could have cookies and drinks. And then they would have to walk down the same path that fans were. So the logistics of that was really bad. Now they walk out of their seat and they walk up the stairs in that room, and it's air conditioned and you can see the field, and there's TVs everywhere and there's tables everywhere. It's at the stadium. You don't have to sit and wait on a fan to walk up and down. I mean, it is your complete area. Kirby Smart has his own office in that recruiting lounge. He can do one-on-one meetings there. What they did there recruiting-wise was invaluable. Now, what they're doing now, I appreciate because it's the fan experience. And they're going to widen some of those areas where it gets really tight. I know the press, and I'm certainly in the press, not real happy about losing that 50-yard line view. But, I mean, you have to be in reality, and, no stadium that's built now gives the press anywhere in the world that view. And I understand the scope of it. Those suites at the 50-yard line are going to be the best views in Sanford Stadium. They're going to go for millions and millions of dollars. So I certainly think Georgia's going to take care of the media that covers, and they always have, but be a little different angle than it was before. But that's just the way of the world. And Mercedes-Benz, I mean, you look at all these new stadiums that are built. LA, same thing. I always check that view, and you go look at the Raiders. I mean, they're in the corner too. So it is the way of the world. But I think the most important about this one, Jordan, you bring it up, this is going to help the fan experience. But as far as recruiting experience, what Kirby Smart did, tearing that end zone out and making that recruiting lounge, that goes along with, what he sees and what he knows in logistics. He did not want his players having to leave, prospects to leave a game 5 minutes into a half and then get down 5 minutes after the game starts just to have a snack at halftime at Georgia.
I'll throw it to Kip here in a second, but I wanted to point out, talk about the press box movement. I will say, look, I covered Auburn before this. This is still a heck of a lot better than the setup at Auburn because you are in the end zone, and if you don't got binoculars, buddy, you're in trouble. But to the point too, Rusty, I mean, this is all about the fans. Think about, what it takes to get to a game today and the options you have to just watch games at home. And hey, if Georgia's playing Kent State and it's a blowout in the third quarter, I could just flip the channel and watch a better game. I think it makes a lot of sense for Josh Brooks and everybody involved in the planning and the understanding that you got to make the fan experience as good as it possibly can be. And I think that this is a big step towards that. And I'll be interested just to see as this project is worked on how it all comes together. Kip, any thoughts on some of these renovations and even just on the, sort of the grand scheme of things, just increased commitment to facilities and what Georgia has been able to do?
Yeah, I mean, Georgia has been, the revenue that's come in, they've always been one of in the top 2 or 3 really as far as just where they come out as far as that net revenue. I mean, they've been able to kind of stockpile, some money. And even though, obviously donors are going to be a big part of this, it's really good timing for them now. I mean, coming off a national championship to say, we are now giving back to you, the fans. And as you guys say, I mean, the way the 4K TVs are looking these days, I mean, like the experience at home, you got a really good view. You got good prices on concessions at home, and you have easy access to the restroom at home. And so I think that's probably a big part of what they need to do, because let's be honest, Sanford Stadium, it's 93 years old now. So, I mean, you can add, but the infrastructure, it takes a little bit more to add on to something like that. And I think that's why this is kind of really important on the south side of the stadium. Is just, you want to improve that experience, because the concessions, the restrooms, I mean, they get bottlenecked during the game. You don't want to leave at halftime and then, miss half of the third quarter trying to get food or go to the bathroom. So I just think that, that's really important for them. Obviously, as Rusty said, the press box being replaced with suites, I mean, that's just going to bring some of that revenue right back in. And I think that's just something that's prudent. They see all the other stadiums doing it. It makes a lot of sense for them to make that change as well. So yeah, these are all just common sense changes. This isn't really like a part of the facilities race. I mean, just looking at the weight room and the things they've been able to add there, I think Georgia's doing pretty well in that area. This is just something that was needed, and you want to get out in front of this, because you just don't want that fan experience. You don't want to start having issues, even with a successful program, putting people in the stands and having people be happy with the stands, because that's really where that support comes from. And that's what's been able to keep this program going and thriving and prepare this program for the success that it's having now.
Again, a big week kind of got kicked off today with SEC spring meetings going on in Destin. A lot to talk about. We already know sort of the headliners or the things people are really wanting to watch is sort of the Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban saga kind of a new chapter with NIL, even outside of those two coaches, will obviously be a big part of the conversation. I do want to throw this out here, guys. What was reported earlier today, something that's going to be something to watch, is the transfer portal. 247 Sports, Brandon Marcello tweeted out that the SEC will discuss whether to remove the February 1st notification deadline for intra-conference transfers and move it to May 1st. Obviously, if they do make this change, this is going to be a very significant change for the SEC. Obviously, if a recruit or if a player from one school decided they wanted to try to transfer to another SEC school, they had to let their school know by February 1st. If this change is made, that means that they just give the same deadline that the NCAA has. Obviously, I think this could be a big change. I mean, this obviously would give the players more power. You know, we wondered about some of those players after spring who entered the portal for Georgia, where they might end up. We knew, obviously, wherever they were going, if they decided they were going to the SEC, they would have to get a waiver to play in 2022. I'll start with you, Kip, and then Rusty, you can chime in with anything you think. What do you think if this change is made, if the SEC gets rid of what had been a rule within the conference, not the other conferences? The other conferences don't have a rule like this. If they got rid of that sort of deadline on February 1st and decided to kind of open things up and allow what would essentially be players to go through spring with their current SEC schools and then potentially go play somewhere else in the fall.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, now it changes the whole dynamic of spring football. Now, I mean, you're for the coaching staff. I mean, now you have to be a little careful as far as just trying to maintain your roster in their end. I mean, this is definitely something that helps the players and gives them the ability to go through and see where they stand on the depth chart. And you know, if they want to stay in the SEC, they're going to have that opportunity. But at the same time, for coaches, now, you know, you're looking at your backup quarterback, your backup safety, that second string left tackle, as we just saw into the transfer portal and come back, a guy like Amaris Mims. I mean, that's kind of is this going to change how the coaches do the reps? You know, are they going to want to be completely transparent on where players are in the depth chart? It's just, you know, at the end of the day, for the head coach, yes, he wants to take care of his players, but his contract's going to be about wins and losses. And right now, having that, maximizing the roster is still the number one part of being a college head coach. I think Kirby Smart would agree with you there. Just that is roster maximization is why Kirby Smart's put Georgia where they are. And I think college coaches, it's just going to be more of a challenge. You're going to know which guys maybe have an eye toward the portal or which guys aren't entrenched as starters, and they might go into spring thinking about it. If I don't end up getting the reps I think I should get, if I don't show out in the spring scrimmage, I'm out. And so spring games might look a little different. You might not see the guy that we know is a starter getting as many reps. It's going to look like NFL preseason where, you know, you might have your starting quarterback take, one series and then he's not even playing the rest of the game. And then your backup quarterback throws for 320 yards, 2 touchdowns, and thinks he's pushing for the job. I mean, that's going to be the way it is. So as far as drama, as far as entertainment, I think it's going to crank it up a notch. As far as the, you know, adding a little bit to what coaches are going through, I think it's going to add another wrinkle into what they're having to handle during spring football, while they're also trying to get recruits on campus and trying to get that roster set for this season.
Rusty, any thoughts on this potential change?
It would be the Wild Wild West. I mean, if that happens, the only you know, Jermaine Burton had to declare before. I mean, you're talking about this is before National Signing Day too. So most of the time, so they kind of know we're losing this guy, losing that guy. But you go post spring, someone like Georgia, Alabama loses, you know, because they got deep rosters, you know, lose guys that are, you know, projected number 2s. And, you know, where would Georgia be if Stetson Bennett left last year right after? Because it was an afterthought spring practice, you know. So there's so many questions there. I'm kind of on the record of saying, if the NIL doesn't change and it keeps progressing the way it is with the payment of players and these high-level deals, I don't think we'll have spring practice in 5 years. I think it'll be like NFL OTAs. You have a weekend or 2. You can do those types of things. These kids are making a ton of money. Now I'm going to go out and risk this thing. Then you start talking about stuff like that. It really presses you So if you have OTAs, everybody gets nice little reps. Everybody has a good off season, and everybody, is going to fight it out in August at that point. So we'll see how this plays out. But if it changes to May 1st, I've talked to some people. The coaches seem to be really split on this. Obviously, there's some coaches that want this really bad because they know some schools are deeper than others, and there's some schools that don't want it. They want to keep February 1st, so you kind of know where you are as you head into spring practice. So that will be something definitely to watch, in my opinion.
Yeah, before we move on, I'll just throw out the school that proposed this change was Alabama. So that's
no doubt.
So very interesting, and we'll see obviously what comes out of the conversations around that. A lot to watch for this week in Destin. We'll pay attention to what is said about NIL, specifically if Greg Sankey comes out and says anything. Part of what was really interesting last week with the board meetings was hearing Jerry Moorhead's thoughts. Obviously, he serves on the NCAA council. He has a lot of strong feelings about how NIL has gone and maybe the direction it's going. I think really what could be the thing we see that has the most immediate effect or biggest impact immediately out of these meetings is going to be future scheduling. There's a lot of talk about what the SEC is going to do once Texas and Oklahoma join. Right now it's projected they'll join in 2025. A lot of people think that might happen sooner than that. We'll see, obviously. But the thought among people following the conference who cover the conference believe that as a result, the way they schedule conference games is going to change, that they're going to find a way to switch things up. And I wanted to see what you guys thought, if you had any preferences. I'll throw out really the plan that I see that I really like is having 3 permanent opponents and then either 5 or 6 just conference games that rotate every year. Obviously, right now they play 8 conference games. The big concern so many people have is losing some of these storied rivalries. You look at some of these games that get played year after year, and when you have new teams enter the conference and potentially changing things, maybe getting rid of divisions, which has been kind of opened up by the NCAA saying that could happen. You're going to lose some of these rivalries. You're going to lose games that a lot of us have gotten to watch and expect to watch year after year. But again, with the proposed 3 permanent opponents and then, rotating the 5 or 6 others year after year, you can say probably the majority of those. I mean, I would think for Georgia, that would be like Florida, Auburn, South Carolina, rivalries that mean a lot in the conference. I mean, you think of like the history of the Deep South's oldest rivalry and obviously Georgia, Florida, and what's been a pretty interesting and sometimes underrated series with South Carolina. I think that might be the best way to go, but I think we'll hear a lot of theories, a lot of opinions this week about the scheduling and what's the best way to go about it. Throw it to you, Kip. Are there any scheduling ideas that you really like or things you just want to see saved as they go through these conversations?
No, I mean, I think the 3-6 model makes the most sense. And I mean, I'm sure some schools are probably not going to like this just because of just how it goes, like how it ends up for every school isn't going to be equal. And you mentioned South Carolina. I mean, does that mean, Georgia, Tennessee isn't an annual game anymore? That Georgia was one of those programs where it seems like every school is a rivalry. And that's just shows that kind of they've had a long period of being successful. And so that's a pretty marketable rivalry. And I think, that's what the conference is going to have to take a look at, which rivalries are the ones, that'll put us in the best position. Putting Florida Auburn back as a rivalry. Texas A&M Texas is obviously going to be a big focal point as well. So I don't think there's any reason for people not to see this as a good thing. I think the SEC is still going to be lopsided as far as which teams are strong at the top. There's always going to be a big top to bottom. It's going to be tough for them to always be competitive. So I think right now it's as balanced as it's been in a while, and I think it's a great time to go to this model. Another conference game is going to add revenue for all the schools, so I think that ninth game is really what allows schools to keep most of their rivalry games intact, and so it just makes a lot of sense. I think eight conference games has been outdated for a long time. So I think that it's the sooner this comes, the better. But usually the only thing that brings about change is the possibility of more money. So I think that's where that extra revenue in the conference game, they look at that, they say, yeah, let's do this. This makes sense now, even though it always made sense.
Rusty, any thoughts as far as future scheduling?
And to me, I mean, obviously we want to keep some of the rivalry games, but they're adding two really, really superpowers, in my opinion. So the matchups around that, I want to play Texas A&M. I want to cover the Georgia Texas A&M game. I want to see Georgia go to Arkansas a little more. Georgia go to LSU. LSU come to Athens. So there's so many good teams in this league. Things come to an end. I would have a hard time in any shape, fashion, or form seeing Georgia, Florida end. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think some new rivalries, some new games, stuff like that. It's not going to really hurt folks. At the end of the day, it's SEC every week. So many good teams, and we're going to have a great schedule regardless how it ends up.
No doubt. There'll be good games no matter who's playing on Saturdays. Well, hey, let's get this thing wrapped up. We pretty much timed this thing perfectly because Kirby Smart's up at the podium right now talking in Destin. So you guys be watching. We'll have all kinds of content out of what Kirby has to say today and the rest of the week. We'll have plenty of stories coming out of that. But we're going to wrap it up right there. Appreciate everybody watching, for listening. Make sure and subscribe and rate and let us know what you think. We're going to keep content coming out, more podcasts coming along the way. And again, pay attention this weekend because it's going to be a big one on the recruiting front for Georgia. So we're going to wrap it up right there. For Rusty Mansell and Kip Adams, I'm Jordan Hill. Until next time, take care.